what they did there was worse than bombing it. Then they replaced it with something that can never be a community. LeBreton Flats was just below the ridge, and it was the toughest neighborhood in the whole city. It was the oldest neighborhood, it was the dirtiest neighborhood, it was an industrial neighborhood. It was, unless you were from here, you probably thought of it as not a great place to be. I thought it was wonderful. This is a pedestrian streetcar community where people live close to the ground, apartments above your commercial. I'll walk you through it in a bit. Little Sterling Avenue. This will give you a flavor for what it was like to live in LeBreton Flats. Go there today. You've got industrial level highways through it. You've got highway lighting. You've got huge institution, the War Museum. We didn't have anything enormous like that, and it's got a new buildings that look, I think, like parking lots. Like you ever seen a parking lot where they have the parking at the bottom and the apartments above? Huge, ugly buildings. And I've become convinced that there's only two kinds of communities in this world. One built for people on their feet like we are, or one built for cars. And LeBreton Flats is built for people with cars. And it'll never, ever be anything of any consequence as far as I'm concerned. But now, this community it never changed for 35 years, and now it's under a lot of stress from developers. Because streetcar communities have become so rare, there's so few of them, that they become desirable. Like, people suddenly realize that we haven't built these kind of communities since the 1950s. And LeBreton Flats was full of these little corners. They were often private, like people had courtyards, from the days when they had horses. They had horses down there, because people needed horses for work, eh? We're gonna go up to the park. This is typical LeBreton. Eh? You'd be full of these little kind of odd parking lots and places where it would lead you to other interesting places. This is going to lead us to the little park. So you can see how in this old neighborhood, LeBreton Flats was like that. People worked there, they lived there, they played there, and it didn't have a big footprint, a big ecological footprint. But of course, the city never invested anything in it. This is luckily in the recent years has had a bit of investment, and it's gentrifying. It didn't change. It just ran downhill for I'd say 35 years. In the last 8 or 9 years, like a lot of these streetcar communities, it's just a lot of money is pouring in here, and it's changing. And if they get enough high-rises, they'll kill it. They'll kill it because they'll create a different kind of community, a drive-to community. I really think that we've built cities, I think, for 5,000 years based on the feet, and then the only really innovation was the streetcar, which made our cities quite a bit bigger. But still, people use streetcar communities on their feet. You always were about 5 minutes walk from your streetcar. But since the 1940s, we have built cities in an entirely new way based on this automobile, and the automobile has literally exploded our cities, and they're not cities for people anymore. I don't think they're cities for cars. We could have put our new stadium down there for soccer and football. Where are we putting it? We're rebuilding it. We're giving it to developers at Lansdowne Park. We're taking our oldest public space dating back to 1868, and we're giving it to 3 developers and say, build them all. I mean, that's kind of what we did at LeBreton Flats. It's like no respect, no honor for your old public spaces. It's, I don't know, there's something where something happened to our city which I think is terribly sad. We kind of lost our way. And part of it is probably just dumb luck, We made some wrong decisions at important times, and this happens all the time. And you don't recover from these things quickly. Their effect on cities can endure for centuries. You have to bring in laws and then be prepared to stand by them. I mean, these zoning things, these communities are all zoned correctly, but the developer just moves in and says, okay, it's zoned for 4-story, I want 26 stories, no problem. Well, what's the point of the law What's the point of law if you don't respect it? You have to have councillors and mayors that actually will stand behind their laws. And we don't have that now. These communities are protected by local politicians who care about this kind of community continuing. The last councillor for this area was a ferocious defender of it and was anti this carnivorous high-story, high-rise development. What did they do? They defeated her. They split the vote. They split her vote by mounting a candidate that was similar to her and then put a lot of money into a kind of an attractive alternative. And so her vote, that's all you have to do really, split the vote of one of your councillor you want split, and if it's done properly, it's pretty easy to do. This last election wasn't about getting rid, most people in Ottawa will tell you, it was all about getting rid of Mr. O'Brien. It was absolutely not. It was all about making Ottawa safe for developers. They were terribly worried. Myself and 8 other councillors were moving towards taking control of council. We were 2 or 3 votes away from controlling council. They demolished the voice of opposition on council. No wonder the public doesn't know how to protect their neighborhoods. They don't have any idea kind of what's going on behind the scenes. That's the reality. That's kind of optimal. That's kind of interesting, don't you think? I mean, look, somebody's had enough courage to build an interesting, modern, new house in this old street. I think that's encouraging. This guy is encouraging. No, I think I'm encouraged by just the existence of these old neighborhoods, you know, and because they're our future. They're where, if we're going to reinvent the city for the 21st century, it's going to be right here in a place like Hintonburg, in the old streetcar communities, which are sustainable in a way that the new ones never will be, because they're totally dependent on oil. So my only fear is that these communities are going to get, they're going to get crushed by the desire to exploit them for gain. I mean, it's one thing, that fellow who lives in that house, whether you like that house or not, I don't know if I like it or not, I haven't made up my mind, but I assume that he built that house to live in, and he bought it not to make a lot of money, because he wants to live in the neighborhood, he wants to bring his kids up here, he wants to contribute. That's a different way of investing in a community than a guy who comes in and says, well, I can make $28 million on this building, and using the community as a piece of meat to get richer. You know, this community has got a very active community association. It defends itself very well, and I think the behavior of these old communities is inspiring. The fact, the way they hang on, they hang tough, and they fight it off as best they can. I mean, the neighborhood I live in, the Glebe, I mean, it's famous. It's an old streetcar neighborhood, much like this one. And that community, it's great because that community has fought off the high-rise developers over and over again. It's invested in their community. It's got their councillors to help them and rebuild their community centers. It shops locally. So it's created this community that is vibrant and sustainable, and that's where I find my hope. It's at this, standing on the street corner talking to you, I find hopeful. Looking down that street, you know, I bet a lot of people will look down that street and say, what a pile of junk. You know, like, oh boy, is that ever an old crappy street? I think it's a great street.